midnight screams.
I've been an usher for 3 years, and it's become clear to me that the rules at the theater where I work are a little strange. Okay, that's a lie. They're insane, but you can judge for yourself. A little background before I begin. My name is Shen. I'm 21, and I've been at this job for 3 years. There are 2 reasons why I'm here and why I haven't left, even after realizing just how twisted this place island. The first is that not many people will hire a high school dropout with a criminal record for petty theft and drug possession. I made some poor decisions early in my life, and while I'm better now, my record has been permanently stained by those unfortunate choices. The second reason is the pay. An usher's job is to check tickets, clean the theaters between showings, and make sure the films are running smoothly. Usually, ushers make minimum wage if they're lucky. I, on the other hand, am paid like a manager at any normal business. Though when you factor in the things I have to deal with on a daily basis, it becomes a lot less appealing. But none of you really care about that, do you? You're here for the stories, I know. So here are the rules of the cinema where I work. Rule number 1, never open the door to Theater 3 once the movie has started. Sounds simple, right? This rule, and the time I nearly broke it, were the first signs I got that this cinema was 100% not normal. Even knowing about Theater 3, you will be tempted to enter. The room is sophisticated, and it will try to trick you in every way it can. You might hear something from inside. You might be told by someone to open it, but you must never, ever do so. The first time I almost entered Theater 3 was a week after I was hired. I had read the rules, sure, and I was confused by them, but I didn't question them. I needed this job, badly. If I had to put up with some extravagant and mysterious rules to get my paycheck, then so be it. I was cleaning the main lobby, where the entrances to the individual theaters are. When I heard it, the thud of something against a hard surface, and it was coming from Theater 3. I rushed to the door. Something was clearly wrong inside. A thin wisp of smoke was curling out from underneath it. By now, the pounding was harder, as if someone was beating their fists against the door from the inside. The handle was turning, rattling in its socket. The person on the other side was desperately trying to get out. "Hello!" I shouted, pressing my ear to the flat surface of the door. "Let us out! Help us!" a voice cried from the other side. It was a woman's voice, the horror audible in every word. Underneath it all, I could hear a faint whooshing, like a strong wind in a tunnel. It took me a second to realize what it was. Fire. "There's a fire! The door is stuck! You have to get us out!" The woman screamed in desperation. The smoke pouring from under the black door thickened, and I coughed, choking on it. The pounding from the other side resumed. "Let us out! Please, let us out!" I reached for the doorknob, all thoughts of the rules gone from my mind. There were people in there who needed my help. A hand shot out from behind me and grabbed my arm. I jumped and spun around. It was David, my manager. I had only ever spoken to him at my interview for the position. He'd given me the impression of a calm but distant man. Now, he was furious, the anger etched into every line on his face. Rule 1, never forget it. "There's a fire in there, David. The door is jammed. We need to get them out." "A fire?" David chuckled to himself. "Oh, it's a clever one today. Trying it on the new guy, is it? Then he was serious again. We have rules for a reason. Leave Theater 3 alone. Everything in there is fine. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The woman inside cried out again, her words choked now as the smoke filled her lungs. Please help me. Shan, I can't breathe. David laughed again. You can hear her. That's cute. They're going to die. I yelled in disbelief, not understanding how he could be so heartless. I'm not going to let people die because of you and your crazy bullshit rules. I lunged for the handle. David looked me dead in the eye. How does she know your name? I froze. Had I told her my name? No. I looked at the door again. No smoke, no pounding fists. I cautiously knocked on it a few times. No one answered. David placed a hand on my shoulder. You see, Shan, he said patiently, Theater 3 stays closed, no matter what. In 20 minutes, the film will end, and everyone will come out perfectly safe. I promise you. But I heard her. I saw the smoke. I stammered, confusion overwhelming me. You saw what it wanted you to see. Trust me, Shan. Theater 3 will try everything to get you to open that door, but it hasn't succeeded in the last 13 years, and it sure as hell won't succeed while I'm the manager here. I won't let that happen again. He gently led me away from the door. 20 minutes later, when the movie in Theater 3 ended, a crowd emerged. Every single person was unharmed. I checked the room afterward. There wasn't a sign of a fire anywhere. Rule number 2. If you see a man in a movie character costume leading children away from the lobby, inform the manager immediately. You know how a lot of cinemas hire people in costumes or mascot suits to promote new movies? Like when the new Star Wars film comes out, and you have guys in stormtrooper armor walking around the building as an advertisement. Those guys. I hate that stuff. Even before I started working here, one of the odd jobs I took after dropping out of school was at a loud, gaudy amusement park outside of town. I had to wear an unwashed, furry suit of the park's mascot for 8 hours straight, 6 days a week. Now, just looking at one of those things makes me nauseous. Rule 2 is a bit of a mystery. I've only had to follow it once, and I'm not even sure what actually happened. But it's an interesting story, albeit a grim one. You guys might like it. The day it happened was our premiere of Avengers: Infinity War. The manager had hired some cosplayers dressed as the main characters to walk around the lobby and take pictures with fans. I was generally okay with it, despite my past experiences. What worried me was that before our shift began, David gathered all the ushers and made us memorize the list of superheroes he had hired. He was absolutely insistent about it, stressing that we had to know them inside and out. If it weren't for the incident with Theater 3, I would have thought he was crazy, but I knew by now that not everything that happened here was what it seemed. It wasn't a long list, so I can still remember it. Captain America, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Thor. In hindsight, the poor guy dressed as the God of Thunder must have been bummed about how fat his favorite character got in Endgame. I knew something was about to happen when I came out of one of the theaters and saw a man dressed as Iron Man, the only Iron Man, slowly walking down the hall toward the trash room. Getting closer, I could see there was something wrong with him. His suit, which must have once been high quality, now seemed to be in disrepair. It was filthy and battered, with some parts in danger of falling off completely. He smelled awful, like roadkill on a hot summer's day. But the worst part was some kind of liquid seeping from the costume's joints. It was a sickly, viscous black-brown, almost like dried molasses. My heart stopped when I saw that trailing behind him was a group of children. None of them looked older than 13. They stared straight ahead, their eyes fixed on the fetid figure as he led them away from the crowd in a single file line. My memory jogged. My trial with Theater 3 had taught me everything I needed to know about the rules. I sprinted to the manager's office, burst inside, and yelled into the room, "David, Rule 2. Iron Man costume heading for the trash room. 3 kids with him." There was a crash from the office as David leaped from his chair so quickly it toppled to the floor. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! I should have known. I shouldn't have hired anyone. God, I should have known. He rummaged through his desk drawer. I caught a glimpse of what he took out before he hid it in his pocket. A vial of some clear liquid and a long, jagged knife made of brass. As he stormed out of the office, he stopped and grabbed me, pressing a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. "Make sure no one goes into the trash room. Don't let anyone in, you understand? If I'm not out in half an hour, pull the fire alarm and evacuate the building. Then call the number on this paper." There was no time for questions. David bolted from the room, and I ran after him. As we rounded a corner, I saw that Iron Man had nearly gotten the kids into the trash room. He was 10 feet from the door, the children still following blindly. David sprinted past them and kicked the door open. Then, in one fluid motion, he grabbed a costume thing, threw it inside, and slammed the door shut. The children convulsed as if their strings had been cut. Then they looked around, confused. They probably didn't even know how they'd gotten there, so they did what any kids would do in that situation. They started to cry. It was 23 minutes before David left the trash room. There were dark red stains on his clean shirt, and a terrible stench clung to him. He looked exhausted. "Clean that up, Shan. If you see anything that isn't in a trash bag, don't touch it. Come and tell me." He staggered back to his office. The trash room was a wreck. The foul, blackish liquid stained the floor, the walls, even the ceiling in some places. In the corner were a few black plastic bags, a damp patch of that dark liquid slowly spreading out from underneath them. Rule number 3. If a man with a tattoo on his left cheek asks for something from the lost and found, do not give it to him. This one isn't exactly tied to a story that I've personally experienced, but I still have something to say about it. After the Rule 2 incident, David started being nicer to me. I guess he trusted me a little more since he knew I'd learned my lesson and understood that the rules weren't there for nothing. They were there to protect all of us. I was curious about Rule 3, and after a while, I worked up the courage to ask about it. So, before my shift one day, I walked into the office and cautiously brought it up. "David, I'm sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you could tell me more about Rule 3. David gave a weak smile. "Curious, are you?" "Don't worry, I was too." He started rummaging through his drawers and file cabinets. Eventually, he handed me several yellowed sheets of paper stapled together at the corner. "Here, read this on your break. Hopefully, it'll satisfy your curiosity." When my break came, I sat down in our break room and did just that. The papers were actually several newspaper articles pinned together. The first was from 15 years ago. Triple murder in grisly slaying. A family was murdered in their own home, the sole survivor telling a horrific tale. The neighborhood of Redacted was left in shock yesterday, after police discovered a gruesome murder scene in the home of local residents, the Prescotts. Of the family of 4, there was only one survivor. Redacted. Prescott, 13, who was found bound and gagged, but otherwise unharmed in his family's living room, next to the mutilated remains of his parents and older sister. Found at the scene of the crime was an umbrella that the survivor says his mother had left behind after the family's trip to the local cinema earlier that week. The cinema's manager, David Redacted, told our reporters that the umbrella had been picked up by a tattooed man the day before the murders occurred. The man had claimed it as his. Police are looking into the possibility that this man is connected to the incident, but so far their search has been unsuccessful. The next 2 articles were from 12 and 5 years ago respectively, and were published by different newspapers, but they both told the same story: a mass murder. One mentioned a lost item from our lost and found being discovered at the scene of the crime. The other didn't, but David had written underneath it in pencil, "Same guy. What does the tattoo mean? Need to make a rule about him." The last article, however, was what really astonished me. It wasn't modern. In fact, it was just a printed photo of an ancient-looking page. The year printed at the top said it came from London, 1899. The writing was hard to read, but the headline told me all I needed to know. Stage fright. London theater shuddered amidst murder spree as mysterious killer claims forgotten items. My name is Shan. I've been a cinema usher for 3 years. My cinema has rules you must never break, no matter how strange or insane they sound. Some rules are harder to follow than others, and some come up more often. Rule 4 is one of the rare ones, and I thank God for that. Rule number 4: if the lights go out while you're cleaning a theater, sit down. A film will play. You must watch it until the end. Do not look away from the screen, no matter what you see or hear. This was the rule that worried me the most when I read it. After my experiences with Rules 1 and 2, I knew how serious the consequences of following these rules, or failing to, could be. My experience with rule number 4 happened while I was cleaning theater one after a movie. Without a word of warning, it happened, the thing I had been dreading for months at that point. The lights went out. There was no sound, just a sudden absence, like a single bulb burning out. 1 second I was in a fully lit room, the next I was standing in pitch blackness. I froze. Even though I had been preparing myself for this for weeks, I was still stunned. Sit down, damn it, sit! Finally, my limbs obeyed my reason. I dove for where I hoped the nearest row was and threw myself into a seat just in the nick of time. The screen lit up. The screen was all static before it resolved into the image of a dark cellar. The film quality was ancient, like some old Super 8mm film from the 90s. Through the grainy screen, I could make out that there was a single chair in the middle of the room. Tied to it was a young man. He was struggling against his bonds, and I could see he was already injured. Small rivulets of blood running down his face from a wound on his forehead, and his arms rubbed raw by the ropes. There was something familiar about the captive. Not his face, I'd never seen it in my life, but his clothes. I flinched as I heard something move behind me. It was the distinct creak of a theater seat. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something, had just sat down behind me. It took all my willpower not to spin around or leap from my seat and bolt for the door. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, praying for this to be over soon. The man on the screen had stopped struggling. He was looking at something behind the camera. It took me a second to realize he must be looking at the cameraman. I almost jumped out of my seat when a voice whispered from behind me. "Good actor, isn't he?" The voice was low, a barely audible whisper. It sounded human, almost, but I knew it wasn't. I can't explain exactly how. It was something about the cadence of his speech, as if his throat wasn't made for human language, and it was just mimicking what it had heard as best it could. Even worse, the voice came from slightly above me, not directly behind. Whatever was in the seat behind me, it must be absolutely enormous when standing. Should I answer? Should I keep watching the screen? The rules hadn't told me. I stayed, silent, gripping the armrest to keep from shaking, my eyes fixed forward on the screen. The camera was moving now as the cameraman brought it closer to his prisoner. The man in the chair tried desperately to recoil, but his bonds were too tight to allow anything but the slightest of movements. And as the camera got closer, I realized what was familiar about him. His clothes. He was wearing a theater uniform. My theater uniform. Where do you think they get the costumes? The thing behind me whispered, a cruel sarcasm in every word. It was toying with me. I didn't respond. The movie went on for about half an hour. I won't tell you exactly what I saw. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm not sure the content would even be allowed on this site, not even a description. Let's just say that I wouldn't wish such a fate on my worst enemy. At one point, I gagged and vomited all over myself and the floor. As my stomach convulsed, I almost took my eyes off the screen. And just then, I felt the thing's hot, foul breath on the back of my neck. It wanted me to look away. It wanted me to give up. I looked back up, forcing my eyes onto the gruesome spectacle playing out on screen. The thing behind me spoke only one more time before the lights came on, as suddenly as they had gone out. It sounded annoyed, angry even. You know what they say, Shan. Rules are made to be broken. Or at least, that guy thought so. I wish I could end the story there, but unfortunately, there's a little more. Because the guy on the screen had been an employee here. Because he had died for breaking a rule. Because David hadn't told us everything, keeping it on a need-to-know basis instead. Someone had suffered a fate worse than death because of his secrecy, and I was going to make him explain himself. Still covered in vomit and cold sweat, I stormed into the lobby, ignoring the disgusted looks of the patrons there. I burst into the office. David looked up calmly. Rule 4 or 11? Rule 4. What? What the hell? Did you know what the risks were? You knew what could happen, but you didn't tell anyone. That guy I saw, the things it did to him. You could have prevented that. David sighed wearily. It's better this way, Shan. What? How could it be? Let me explain, David said, standing up and looking me straight in the eye. There was an edge to his voice now, and his eyes held a glint of suppressed anger. I fell silent. Some things can be avoided if you know about them. Theater 3 is like that. If you know what it wants and how it will try to get it, it's easier not to fall for it. But there are some things, Sean, some things that only get stronger the more you know about them. You can avoid breaking Rule 4 with what you know now. You just have to keep looking at the screen. But the more you know about it, the more things in that room become manifest to try and make you turn away. And that last guy, the one I saw on screen, he knew too much, even more than you know now. It's a mistake I will never make again, and a lesson I'll never forget. There is a line, Shan, that I cannot let anyone cross. If you know too much, no amount of will or strength can keep your eyes glued to that screen. Rule number 5. If you enter a theater where all the patrons are staring directly at you and smiling, inform the manager immediately. Rule number 5 was the one that raised the most questions in my mind about this theater and my job. My encounter with it happened when I'd been working here for about a year and a half. One thing you should know about an usher's job: we need to check that every film is running smoothly, that the subtitles are working, etc. We're only supposed to do it at the start of each screening, but if we have some downtime during our shift, we like to do random checks to make sure everything is okay. Unfortunately, it was because of this that I walked into Theater 5 one day and nearly had a heart attack when I realized everyone inside was staring into my eyes, smiling strangely, careful not to break eye contact. I slowly backed out of the room. The patrons never looked away, not even to blink. The second I was relatively safe in the hallway, I ran for David, who was talking to a customer at our little concession stand. "Rule number 5, I said when I reached him. David went pale. The customer, an attractive young woman, looked at him with a confused expression. "I'm so sorry," David muttered to her before turning to me. "Which theater?" "Number 5. Follow me." We ran to the theater. Once inside, David motioned for me to stay at the back of the seating rows. "Stay here." He didn't have to tell me twice. The room was filled with a deathly silent audience. Every single head turned in unison to follow David as he walked to the front of the screen and stopped in the middle of the room. "What do you want?" he said into the vast room. Everyone in the room opened their mouths at once and spoke in a perfect, eerie unison. "Hello, manager. It's been too long." "Cut the crap," David snarled. "I know your game. What do you want this time?" The room let out a collective cold laugh. "Always so direct. I always liked you more than your predecessor." David's jaw was clenched, his hands balled into fists. I had never seen him so angry. "Tell me what you want," he hissed through gritted teeth. "Tell me what you want, and then let these people go." My, so impatient, so eager for it to be over, the crowd replied. "I want you to open Theater 3, now." David went pale. "No, ask for something else. There are lines I won't cross. There are rules." The thing behind the crowd's eyes laughed. "Please. Ah, yes. Your precious rules. You think they can stop anything? They stop nothing, David. They only delay it. Giving me information for free," David said sarcastically. "You've changed since we last spoke. I'm only telling you what you already know, and my price hasn't changed. You will open Theater 3. For the first time, David hesitated. It was only for a second, but the thing noticed and laughed at him cruelly. "I told you, I won't do it. That rule is never broken," he said finally. "Have you forgotten your history in just 13 years? The crowd sneered. "These people's fates are in your hands, David. Do you know what happens to them when my price isn't paid? Are you trying to atone with this meaningless resistance for the sacrifice made for your mistake? I am not atoning, David hissed, and I made no mistake. Would the one you miss so dearly agree? I think not, the thing said. There was a silence, then the crowd spoke again. The price has been paid. These people are safe. David blinked in confusion. What? What price? Theater 3 was never the price. The agony of your memory, as well as the unanswered questions that will now plague this little servant of yours. That was the price. You bastard, David whispered. You son of a bitch. Until we meet again, manager. David stormed out of the room without another word. The crowd followed him with their eyes, and then fixed them on me. A smile, a nod. Then, the crowd looked up as one and shed their identical behavior. A hidden tension was released. They were free. Rule number 6. If a customer hears noises in the air ducts, assure them you will look into it. Take one of the packages marked 6 from behind the bar, enter the air duct via the trash room, and place the package at least 10 meters inside from the entrance. Get out of the duct as fast as you can. This is one of the easier rules to follow, although the time limit was pretty unnerving at first. It's also one of the more common ones, usually coming up about once a week. Thankfully, I've never seen anyone fail to uphold it. The first time I had to feed the thing in the vents was on a very busy shift. We had premiered The Rise of Skywalker a few days before, and we were still packed with customers. I was sweeping the lobby for what felt like the millionth piece of dropped popcorn when an angry-looking young man in a Star Wars shirt stormed up to me. "Good day, sir, can I?" I began. "Yeah, man, whatever." He cut me off immediately. "Can you fix your damn air conditioning? There's something banging around in there, near the grill in our theater. I'm not paying for this crap." I gritted my teeth to hold back my temper at the man's manners, but kept my cool. "Yes, sir. Of course. I apologize for the inconvenience. David might forgive you for letting a room full of people die at the hands of God knows what, but he wouldn't tolerate you being rude to a customer. He was just like that." After the customer was gone, I grabbed one of the marked packages from behind the bar. It was unnervingly heavy, and I could feel a dampness seeping through it. Trying my best to ignore it, I went through the trash room and opened the grill covering the air duct. I could hear what the customer had complained about, a rapid, chittering knock, like fingernails drumming incessantly against the metal. My skin crawled. It was unnerving to be so close to the sound of dozens of long, skinny legs. I took a deep breath and crawled into the air duct. It was cold and gloomy inside. The passage was cramped, and I was forced onto my stomach, pushing myself forward with my elbows and knees. As I crawled forward, I could see by the dim light that there was a pile of something up ahead, around the 10-meter mark. When I reached it, I groaned. In the duct before me was a pile of gnawed animal bones. With trembling fingers, I opened the package and dropped a whole chicken on top of the remains. The sound in the duct stopped. I held my breath. Then it returned, faster. Clack, clack, clack. Louder than before, a frantic, hungry rhythm. Horror and adrenaline flooded my brain. I scrambled back toward the opening. How long had I been in here? How long had I left? 30 seconds? 20? The clacking of feet was now mixed with a scraping sound as something heavy dragged itself toward the food and toward me. Finally, my feet touched the end of the duct. Kicking frantically, I tumbled out onto the floor of the trash room. I slammed the grill shut. The chittering inside had stopped. Listening closely, I could hear the sound of tearing, of ripping flesh. And this was one of the easier rules. My name is Shan. I've been a cinema usher for 3 years. My cinema has rules you must never break, even if you think they're crazy. One of the rarest rules we have is rule number 7. I've only experienced it once, about 6 months ago, and I honestly hope I never have to deal with it again. Rule number 7. If you notice shadows out of sync with their surroundings, return alone to the last room you were in as quickly as possible. Close the door, then return to the lobby. Until you do so, do not touch your shadow under any circumstances. The biggest danger you can face in this job is getting too familiar with the weirdness. That was the mistake I made with rule number 7. I let my guard down. I wasn't paying attention anymore. I had made it to the other side of the lobby from Theater 6 before I realized that I didn't have a shadow. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I looked back the way I had come. My shadow, completely detached from me, lay on the floor by the door to Theater 6, and another usher, a guy named Liam, stood between me and it. He was looking right into my eyes, with a wide grin plastered on his face. I had to think fast. Whatever was happening, I had to get back to Theater 6. But with Liam in the way, I had no path to it, not without confronting him. Sean, is everything okay? David called from the door to his office. He sounded concerned, worried even. Could I answer him? Would that make things worse? I ignored the question and started back toward Theater 6. The more I looked around, the clearer it became, just how strange my surroundings were. Every shadow was cast in a different direction, as if each object was lit by a different source of light. I was getting close to Liam now. I slowed my pace, walking in what I hoped was a casual manner. If I could just get past him and to the door. David asked you a question, Shan, Liam said, the thin smile still on his face. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. I heard him, Liam. I forgot something in Theater 6, that's all. And what was that? What did you forget? He knew. I could see it in his eyes. Liam, the thing impersonating Liam, knew what I was trying to do. It knew I wasn't fooled by its act. I heard the office door open behind me, footsteps approaching. Shan? David asked. What did you forget? He walked around me, standing beside Liam. I had to convince them that I didn't realize anything was wrong. I couldn't get to Theater 6 otherwise. Even if I made it there, the rule said I had to be alone. They couldn't follow me. I forgot to clean up a spilled drink. I'll just grab some paper towels from the trash room and get it done, I said with a weak smile, cursing my trembling voice. It was a terrible lie. I could see it in David's eyes. He wasn't convinced. Liam, give him a hand, would you? He said, and walked back toward his office. Liam smiled at me again, a horrible sight. Well then, let's go, Shan, he sneered. We walked to the trash room, my mind racing as I tried desperately to think of a way out of this situation. Liam was watching me from the corner of his eye, waiting for me to make a break for Theater 6. A desperate plan formed in my mind. It was a gamble, and I knew the other rules of the cinema didn't even apply in this place, whatever it was. But it was the only escape I could think of. We entered the trash room. Liam wasn't even being subtle anymore. He was staring directly at me, still wearing that awful, wide grin. With Liam following behind, I walked to the back of the trash room and punched him in the face with all my strength. The thing wearing his body staggered backward, surprised, and in that time, I fumbled for the air duct at the back of the room, opening it. At the last second, the thing's fingers grabbed me from behind and spun me around to face it. The human appearance Liam had worn before was peeling away like snakeskin. His face became asymmetrical, his eyes shadowed voids. He laughed at me. "I knew you weren't fooled. I knew it. Playtime's over. Time for you to meet your shadow. It's going crazy. I hope you like it here, because you're staying with me." I kicked out desperately, fighting against the thing's strength as its grip tightened on my arm. I managed to spin us around, pushing back into the open air duct. It cried out in pain. "Ever since your manager made his stupid rules, I've been alone. No more. First you, then him." Finally, I heard what I had been desperately hoping for, a sound coming from the air duct behind Liam. The patter of skinny feet. The thing had only a second to realize what I had done. Its eyes widened. "No!" Then it was pulled back. A terrible force yanked it into the vent, the crack of bone as its back and legs were bent at grotesque angles. Then it was gone, screaming and cursing. I staggered away from the wall. I had very little time. As I crossed the lobby toward Theater 6, the thing wearing David's body burst out of the office. It screamed in frustration as it launched itself at me. I reached Theater 6, my shadow coiling on the ground, trying to reach me, but just missing. David was close, a few feet away, a cry of rage and desperation filling the air. I threw the door open, jumped inside, and slammed it shut behind me. A heavy silence fell. Cautiously, I opened the door again. The lobby was empty. I looked down and breathed a sigh of relief. My shadow was once again at my feet. Rule number 8. If a trash bag begins to move violently or make noise, throw it down the special chute in the trash room. Do not, under any circumstances, open the bag. One of the jobs we have to do here is clear out the trash room after every shift. This means loading all the garbage onto a cart and taking it down to the basement parking lot, where a truck comes to pick it up weekly. Rule 8 is probably the worst after number 4. It's not as mentally scarring, but it can still mess with your head if you think about it too much. It certainly did a number on me when I had to deal with it for the first time about a year ago. I was almost done with the trash that day. One more trip with the cart and I'd be finished. I was looking forward to ending my shift and getting to my warm bed at home. That's when a bulging trash bag fell to the ground with a wet smack and started screaming, "Help me! Oh God, please help me!" I yelled and jumped back. The bag writhed on the floor as the person inside strained against the thick plastic. It cried out again in panic, "Oh God, please let me out, I can't breathe." My heart hammered against my ribs. With trembling fingers, I reached for the bag to tear it open and free the person trapped inside. I grabbed the bag and froze. Rule number 8. The thing in the bag screamed in pain and fear. "Is someone there? Please, you have to help me." It started to sob, the bag vibrating as it curled in on itself. A chill ran down my spine. This thing sounded human. It sounded like it was in agony, It sounded real. But this place had taught me not to trust anything I heard or saw. Cautiously, I took hold of the bag. A hand shot out of the writhing sack and grabbed my arm. I yelled and staggered back, breaking the thing's grip. "Help me! You have to help me! I can't move! I can't breathe! I can't!" The arm was enough. I could still feel its grip on my own. The arm was human-sized, but no person could have fit in that bag. I grabbed the writhing, amorphous mass, hands gripping me through the plastic. It cried for help. Staggering with its weight, I stumbled to the trash chute and dropped it over the edge. It clung to the rim with its hands. "Please, please," it whimpered, almost a whisper now. I can't go back there. Please, don't." I pried its fingers from the lid. It screamed, sliding down the chute, scratching at the sides as it disappeared into the darkness. And silence fell again. Rule number 9. If someone leaves Theater 3 during a showing, do whatever they ask. Inform the manager immediately. For all the wrong reasons, this story is not like the others I've told. This story will be different, and I'm not sure I like that. I'm not sure where it will lead me and this theater. Because this story happened yesterday. Although David had warmed up to me during my time here, I think he might even trust me. He had still never said anything about Theater 3. To be fair, I was too afraid to ask. So, rule number 9 was always a source of mystery and no small amount of apprehension. No one I asked could even remember a time they'd had to follow it. As strange as it seemed, no one had ever come out of Theater 3 during a showing. At least not in all the years I'd worked here. No one could remember David ever explaining the rule, or even talking about it. Rule number 9 was as much a mystery as the room it was connected to. So, nothing could have prepared me for yesterday. When the door opened and a well-dressed man stepped out of Theater 3, I froze in my tracks. No amount of experience at this job could have prepared me for that. He walked up to me as I stood, staring in awe and terror. "Good evening, sir," he said, his voice as flat and emotionless as a blank slate. But unlike the thing from rule number 4, it was unmistakably human. Good evening," I finally stammered. The man smiled in amusement. "I'd like to speak with the manager." "Shit, yes. Right this way, sir," I replied, forcing a calm I did not feel. I wish I could have told the thing to stay, that I could have warned David, but it was as if my brain was frozen, slow and unresponsive. We walked to the office and entered. I didn't even have time to speak. David looked up, saw the man, and went pale. Rule number 9. "David, please leave us. Wait for me outside." I obeyed. Nothing could have kept me in that room. Absolutely nothing. I went out into the hall and waited. Time crawled by. I could hear the murmur of conversation from inside the office. Occasionally, David's voice would rise, and I swear at one point I heard him crying. It was half an hour before David opened the door and stepped out. He was even paler than before, as if all the blood had drained from his body. His hands were shaking slightly. But I realized in the second before he closed the door, I could see the room behind him. It was empty. The man was gone. "David?" I asked cautiously, not knowing what to say. "Island is everything. What happened?" David fixed his gaze on me, his eyes bloodshot. Go home, rest, sleep, and prepare. Why? Prepare for what? We're breaking rules 10 and 11 tomorrow. My name is Shan. I have been a cinema usher for 3 years. My cinema has rules you must never break if you value your life. If you're confused, perhaps you should start from the beginning. Walking up to the theater yesterday was the hardest thing I've ever done. Anticipation and dread were a tangled mess in my gut. David's advice to rest and sleep had been impossible, and all night I could only think of what was to come. When I arrived for work the next morning, the cinema was completely silent. A sign hung at the entrance, temporarily closed due to technical difficulties. David was already there. He sat in the darkened office, staring silently at the wall. I stood in the doorway, not daring to interrupt his thoughts. Finally, he looked up. His voice was hollow. Sorry, I was just thinking. He stood up and walked over to me. You said we were breaking rules today, I reminded him. Yes, Rule 10 and Rule 11. Rule number 10. If you find a black, leather-bound book on the premises, do not open it. Rule number 10. The black book, as we called it. You could see it on most of your shifts, and resisting the urge to open it was one of the first things you had to learn when working here. No one knew what lay between its ancient, yellowed pages. It was always moving, mysteriously. You might see it in the corner of the trash room, propped up as if in invitation. Then you'd walk out into the lobby or into the office, only to see it appear on the floor. Then it would be lying on David's desk, as if it had been there all along. No one had ever seen David open it. It seemed today I would be the one to witness it. It took us an unusually long time to find the book. After searching the office, the lobby, and the theaters, we returned in defeat, only to find it sitting smugly on one of David's filing cabinets. He snorted with bitter amusement and picked it up. The ancient, time-worn pages crackled as he carefully opened it. From where I stood, I couldn't see the text inside, so I moved closer to look over his shoulder. David immediately slammed the book shut. Not yet, Sean. Not yet. I was getting frustrated. David, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know what we're doing today, or why we're breaking 2 rules. I don't expect you to tell me everything, but at least give me something. My anger flared up as quickly as it died down. He was still my boss, after all. David chuckled softly, silent for a few seconds. You're right, Sean. You deserve to know, at least a little. I'm sorry. After doing this job for 15 years, I've gotten used to not saying more than people need to know. He sighed and continued. 13 years ago, I made a mistake, Shan. Theater 3 used my feelings for someone very important to me and made me open that door. It almost all ended right there. Ironically, it was the sacrifice of the person I thought I was saving that bought us all this time. What do you mean, bought time? That's right, Shan. We're on borrowed time. And yesterday, that time ran out. If we don't do something, Theater 3 won't even need someone to open the door for it anymore. It will break free on its own, and I can't let that happen. And the book? What is it? Consider it a sort of instruction manual. All the rules of this cinema are written in it. David looked down at the pages again. I understood the conversation was over, but I was glad to know something, at least. David flipped through a few pages, skimming the contents before stopping on a particular passage, smiling to himself. "Shan, I need you to step outside for a moment. This won't take long." I hesitated, but obeyed. Standing in front of the office, I could see David's shadow on the window blind, pacing back and forth. Suddenly, another shadow appeared behind him. It glided around and stopped opposite him. Then another, and another. I heard voices from inside the office. David's voice was firm, resolute. The other voices overlapped, just faint whispers, sharp as a razor blade on skin. The shadows converged on David. He stood still, his hands at his sides. Then they rushed him. The darkness washed over him, merging with his own shadow, and disappeared. Without a second's hesitation, I burst into the office, the door flying open with a loud bang. David was there, leaning on his desk, panting, but he was unharmed. "What the hell just happened?" I asked frantically. "What were those things?" David laughed to himself. "You could call them messengers or monitors." "David, please, can you stop being so cryptic?" I snapped, fed up with being kept in the dark again. "I just summoned something that shouldn't be summoned, Shan. But today is a special day. Desperate times call for desperate measures." He walked past me, still holding the black book. "Let's go. It will be here soon, and I don't want to keep it waiting." I followed him silently, my stomach churning with anxiety. As the office door opened, I immediately saw what he was talking about. Rule number 11, the woman in black. Rule number 11, if a woman in a black dress offers you a drink, do not accept it. A woman stood before us. She was tall, taller than both me and David. Her pale face was a stark contrast to her jet black hair. She wore a long, flowing black dress, as soft and dark as smoke in the night. In her hand was an intricately carved wooden cup. I had seen the woman in black before. She, or it, often wandered the cinema, occasionally stopping in front of the ushers to offer them a sip from her cup. The liquid inside was clear, looking for all the world like plain water, but I never believed it was as harmless as it seemed. Luckily, she never forced anyone to drink. A simple refusal, and she would nod silently, as if she already knew the answer, and walk on. But this time, she was here. "Would you like a drink from my cup?" Her voice was as soft as a breath, tinged with a deep, unexplainable sadness. I was ready to refuse. It had become almost a reflex after dozens of encounters with her. But as I opened my mouth, I realized she wasn't looking at me. She was talking to David. He was silent for a moment. "I accept," he finally replied. "David, what the hell are you doing?" I cried out in alarm, but he cut me off. "This has to be done, Shan. There's no other way to stop what's coming." He turned back to the woman in black. "It's been too long." A faint smile touched her lips. She offered him the cup. "Drink." David took the cup. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then his eyes hardened with resolve. He tilted his head back and drank it all in one go. Immediately, he gasped for air, staggering back, dropping the cup to the floor with a heavy thud. His full weight crashed against me, nearly sending me to the ground. David's face was ashen. He coughed violently, splattering bright red drops on the floor. "The price has been paid," the woman whispered. "I know," David managed to say, his body racked by a violent cough. "Now it's your turn to keep your promise." "Of course. What would you like to know? She smiled sadly. David took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. I want to know how to stop Theater 3 from escaping. He weighed each word carefully. I realized he only had one chance to ask. The woman frowned. You won't like the answer, my child, she whispered. Are you sure you want to know? David gritted his teeth, his eyes burning with determination. I'm sure. Tell me. A thin trickle of red escaped from the corner of his mouth. The woman in black leaned down, her lips close to his ear, and whispered words I never wanted to hear. Then she stood up straight. The deal is done. Goodbye, David. She turned and walked away, as if nothing had happened. As she rounded the corner of the hallway, I knew for certain that if I ran to look, she would be gone. I turned back to David. Blood was now streaming from the corners of his eyes. The black book slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor. What did you do? What's happening? I stammered in panic. What did she tell you? I had to lean in close to hear his answer, his voice weakening with every word. Go to the projection room. Turn on all the projectors. Do it now. Hurry. David's voice held absolute authority. I sprinted toward the projection room. I flipped each switch, moving from projector to projector. The hum of motors filled the space. Though the theaters were completely empty, each one now had a movie running. And then I realized what David was doing, but it was too late. I raced back to the lobby, taking the stairs from the projection room 3 at a time. I have to be in time. I have to be in time. But he was no longer in front of the office. The black book lay there, open from its fall, the only sign David had ever stood there. I looked around the lobby, my heart sinking. Of course. David stood in front of Theater 3. His hand was on the doorknob. He turned to look at me, his eyes full of blood. David, don't! I screamed. He just smiled. 13 years, Shan. Use them well. Then he opened the door. The darkness on the other side was absolute. Every ray of light disappearing as it hit the frame, as if swallowed whole. David didn't hesitate. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I was frozen to the spot. He was gone. The ground shook, a low growl echoing from deep within the theater. The door to Theater 3 rattled violently in its frame, as if something inside was trying to force its way out. It struggled, but to no avail. Whatever David had done, whatever his sacrifice had bought, it had bound Theater 3 once more, buying more time. The growling subsided. The door stopped shaking. Silence descended. A faint rustle from below drew my eyes down. The black book was open to the last page. There was only a single line written in black ink. Rule number 12. There must always be a manager